Yeah. It's recording now, Mayor.
Okay.
Now, are you seeing the right screen?
Seeing house plants, yes.
Okay. It's all yours, John. Make sure that works, sir.
Excuse me, what we're seeing is the projection of your slides, but we're not seeing it directly from your computer. So whenever anyone else talks or there's a background sound, we're not going to be able to see what's going on.
Yeah. It's gone again, like you said.
John,
Because you haven't shared your screen.
if I share the screen, I can't record it.
Yeah. Goes back to house plants. Okay. Good
Sir?
morning. I'm John Poehler, Williamstown, New Jersey. I've been a house plant enthusiast for about 50 years. I've been with this organization for about 10 now. And I've been teaching this class except for COVID, I've been teaching this class about 4 or 5 times now. I put several classes on the outside also as a request for some community organizations. Okay, how I like to work this is if you have questions, I like the Socratic method of teaching, questions, answers, etc. We learn from each other. And I don't hold back with any information because there's no sense to it. You ever have that Italian grandmother that has this recipe and she gives you everything but one ingredient? It doesn't taste like yours. Well, that's not going to happen. Okay, so let's get started here. As you probably know, all houseplants are tropical or semi-tropical. There are very few plants that are frost resistant or frost tolerant. Although I do have a couple of cactus at the library. Yeah, the old man of the Andes and the old lady of Peru, which actually do occur on high mountainsides and are protected by, don't you believe this, hair. They actually have hair besides the needles to protect them from frost. It's amazing. So that is true. Most plants are, tropical and semi-tropical and can't stand frost and stuff. And a lot of houseplants do grow in containers. We'll get into the variety of containers. And nearly all are in leaf year-round, except for certain citrus plants. Young lady brought up a question about her leaf drop on her citrus plants, so I tried to answer that for her before the class started. So needs are light, temperature, media, water, and fertilizer. Each one of those will be taken separately. 3 aspects of light quality, duration, and intensity. Light quality can be defined as something as direct or indirect light. Some plants love direct light. Believe it or not all houseplants love direct light. Not even cacti like direct light all the time. So the duration, if you get it from sunset or sunrise to sunset, you're talking somewhere sometimes close to 12 to 16 hours worth of sunlight. Not too many plants can take that, even cacti. Cacti sometimes will hide in front of a large, tall cactus to get some shade in the afternoon sun. So light intensity. We measure light intensity by foot candles. It also could be lumens, L-U-M-E-N-S. Low light, 50 to 250 foot candles per square inch. Very few houseplants can take that. Sansevieria, which has now been redefined as Dracaena, although I still call it, and everybody else that likes Sansevieria, we still call it Sansevieria. We don't care what Linnea has anything to say about it. So they could take very, very limited light, not completely dark, but I have mine facing the north window. So you're not getting any direct sunlight in there, but you're getting some nice, bright, indirect light. Okay. 250 to 1,000 candle watt. Some orchids can take that. They like it, especially the strapping grass-like foliage. They could take as much light as you can give them, but not all day long. The hot sun doesn't do it very well. Highlight 1,000 plus foot candles, cacti, succulents, things like that can take it. But again, not all day long, so the duration matters. Okay. Light quality, wavelengths, and colors which make up light. Okay. Red and blue spectrum of white light, that's what plants absorb. Yellow and green of the spectrum, that's what they reflect backward. Our eyes, that's what we pick up. Our human eyes are the color green seems to be a dominant trait in our ability to make shades of green. It's been estimated that we can tell at least 1 billion different shades of green. Everything from way down in the light yellow, greenish, all the way up to the dark, almost black greens. Okay. Well, there's reasons for it. As we know, photosynthesis is the main thing that drives the plant. It takes in water, it takes in carbon dioxide, it exhales oxygen, which makes it valuable for cleaning the air in our homes. I mentioned Sansevieria. Sansevieria is probably one of the best plants to have in your home as far as air filtration. They can filter out all kinds of out gases. You put a new rug in, you smell that gas and out gases for a couple of weeks. They can actually absorb that. Okay. Toluene, which is a Sansevieria, mother-in-law's tongue. Mother-in-law's tongue. Oh, there he is. Suddenly there's light. Okay. Well, I don't know. That's what they gave it. It's got a pointed tongue on it. Does that tell us anything? Okay. Sunlight, standard all light is compared to the wavelengths. Of course, sunlight puts out all aspects of the spectrum. But like I said earlier, only the blue and the red part of the spectrum does the plant absorb for its functions. Fluorescent, cool bulbs, bluish cast, while warm lights such as reddish appearance both favor desirable growth. I want to update this. Last year, I was starting some native plants indoors, seedlings, okay? And I went and bought myself a couple of LED lights that were in the red-blue spectrum, just to see how they would do. Fantastic, fantastic. LED, it's cheaper, it's more long-lasting, and it's cool to the touch. Provides a little bit of warmth, but not as bad as you get some of these incandescent bulbs. Way back in the day, I used to have incandescents, and they burned out like overnight. Great and everything like that, but they just are so intense with the heat output that if you got anything near, it's going to burn it. And like I said, they're very expensive to replace. Back in the day, I can remember $6 a bulb. It's ridiculous. And then I jumped to fluorescents. Okay, fluorescents were good, but yet they really didn't cover the red-blue spectrum. These things actually glow pink. It's hard to believe, the LED lights I have now. I highly recommend them. They're not that expensive. And they're good for like, I think like 55,000 hours. And they're inexpensive.
So all LED have a red blue or they?
No, they'll show white light, like an incandescent bulb does, or like a fluorescent cold light.
Right, so you just have to read the package to see if they're the right
Well,
one.
you buy them. I got mine on Amazon. I'm not pushing Amazon, I'm not a salesman or whatever. But that's what I suggest. We
You're
gotta-
gonna have to tell me.
Yeah.
For light, looks like, I don't know what it is, it looks like a fluorescent tube. Do they make the LED tubes?
Yeah. And what's interesting about it, you can hook up, instead of having an individual plug for like a fluorescent light, you can hook up as many as 4 tubes in a row if you want. Because they have the connection. They don't take a lot of electricity. That's another good selling point. I didn't jack up my electric bill that much. They come in all kinds, and tabletop, where they could stand over top of the tables, and 36-inch, that's what I got. 4 of them, as a matter of fact. Okay. I have found since the 65-foot swamp maple crashed in 2020, that now all of a sudden I got so much light that it could be 30 degrees outside and almost 85 degrees in the sunroom I have. But of course, then it goes down precipitously at night. So I have to have some kind of heat to preserve some around 60 degrees. Fluorescent lights for 16 use. Well, you know what? Like I said, update it to the LED lights. You might be able to get away with less time than 16 hours. Trial and error, that's all I can tell you. For ceilings, it was, for me, 16 hours. When I woke up in the day at 5 o'clock in the morning, I turn them on. When I go to bed at 9, I turn them off. And also a heat mat too. It's great for ceiling. Okay, day neutral. Okay, you see the things up there, corn, cucumbers. They don't need anything except corn needs a lot of nitrogen. They are nitrogen addicts. They love it. Long day petunias. That's why they only bloom in the summertime. Short day chrysanthemums, poinsettias. A matter of fact, to get a poinsettia back to bloom, and those leaves that surround a small thing in the middle, which is the actual flower, they're bracts. They're leaf bracts. They're not flowers. Okay, poinsettias are very poisonous, so don't around your grandkids or your pets or whatever, because they're very poisonous. They have a poisonous resinous sap that's all euphorbias, which they're a group of, have. Chrysanthemums, they start to bloom when the days start to shorten. Okay. We went over that season of the year. You get more light in the summertime than you do in the wintertime. That's obvious. Location of home. If you're going to have a plant that needs a lot of light, what point or what position in the house would you place that plant? In the south, because the south gets the most amount of light. East will get the morning sun, which is great for like coleus, if you take in the cuttings and try to root them over for next year, because they're very expensive. They like the east windows. Some orchids will like the east windows. Phalaenopsis will. West windows, you get the afternoon sun. My Japanese maples love the afternoon and the morning sun. They do not like the hot sun in the daytime. So that's a point. Okay. Full sun, south facing window, we covered that. Part sun, east and west. Areas which never receive direct sunlight, that would be north. And you can grow things like the Sansevieria north windows. They do very well. They don't really go bazonkers for you, but they do well. And the other thing about watering, we're going to have to talk about that, because watering is a problem. People kill their plants with kindness. If they don't realize it, they don't need to be drowned. That's a hydrometer works well. So does your first digit on your finger. When you go down to your first digit here, and it's at the tip, it feels wet, don't water it. You're not going to kill a plant. You don't water it once, you can overwater it by killing it, or killing it by overwatering. Oh, this one's a good one. Plants on top of plants may cause heat injury or roots. I got a consult one time, years ago. Woman couldn't believe it. I just don't know what's wrong. The tops of my plants are all burning off. I said, well, let me come and look at your light situation, your watering situation. I get there, and she's got radiator heat. And she had a bore on top of the radiator. And she had these plants that were growing, leaf plants that were growing off it, and then the tips were, I said, come here. Wet your hand, put it over here, the top of the leaf. Oh yeah, I feel that heat. I said, yeah, And your plants don't like that. They're burning up. Don't put it on a radiator. Be surprised how people just don't think things through. Cool or warm breezes from doors, windows, or HVAC. Some plants are very, very sensitive to drafts, okay? Especially orchids when they're in flower. You want to curl an orchid flower, put it in direct heat or direct cold. Like your favorite person in the world for Valentine's Day buys you an orchid. They go to the big box stores and they buy these beautiful orchids. They bring it home. A day or two later, all the buds turn black because they bought it Valentine's Day and it was 30 degrees out when they took it out to their car, started the car, and took about 5 minutes to warm up. By then, the damage is done. Cold drafts, nasty. The other thing about drafts, well, we'll talk about that when insects come up with it. Okay. Wood stoves, why fluctuations in temperature? Why do you think? And it's dry heat. You dry out your wood to put it in your stove, okay? Because you don't want to burn wet wood, because what happens? A lot of smoke comes out. Okay, so you dry your wood when you put it in there. Now that dry heat's just emanating throughout the house. You wake up in the morning in the wintertime and your nose is like you were at this Sahara desert. Your lips are all cracked. Well, that's humidity. That's another factor that influences plant growth. Growing medium, what type of plant it is. Okay, this is, we talked about this before class started about certain things that are made for certain plants. If you have a generalized plant, you know, a leaf plant or whatever, doesn't need specific conditions, you can buy those growing mediums from any store anywhere. You get into things like cacti, palms, citrus, they make specific plant mediums just for that. Orchids, if they're in a pot, they can grow with ceramic bowls now. I use my ceramic bowls because the medium does not provide any nutrition. So, you know, fir bark, I use mine, a special mix for fir bark. There are terrestrial orchids that they could use certain types of soil. I use fir bark for mine. Mine's beautiful right now. It's got 14 blossoms on it, about the size of this. A Cymbidium orchid. Yep. Okay, medium, it holds a lot of water. If you use regular soil that holds a lot of water, some come with those little crystals in them. That I put that in houseplants that love water because what they do is they suck it up and then they release it slowly to the roots. Okay, so your watering agenda doesn't have to be so complicated. By the way, there's a little thing in here about don't follow a routine. Yeah, okay. That's how you get in trouble. Believe it or not, in wintertime, my succulents, I cactus at my home and at the library, okay, they get watered once a month. They get thorough water, but they get watered once a month. And I don't leave the dishes, the pots themselves sitting in the dishes full of water, because that's just inviting root damage. With the orchids, I soak them for about 10 to 15 minutes in a big round thing that I've got. I soak them in there, take them out, let them dry out, let them flush, then put them back on the hooks near the windows. Okay, bromeliads and air plants. Yes, dear.
John, you should tell us which library.
Monroe Township Library in Williamstown, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Board of Trustee president this year. Not that it matters. Okay,
I think you skipped. I think I might have answered. Skip that one.
I'm sorry.
Go back one.
Back one.
No, I think it's not.
Am I good or not bad? Okay, sometimes these plants you buy at the big box stores or whatever, or if you go to a nursery where you have a nursery person that knows what they're talking about, and they're rare. They're not some kid working summertime and, you know, trying to pay off their student debt loan. they'll give you information regarding your plant. If not, do research. I mean, my God, I'm on the internet almost every day on YouTube, just checking up on the newest thing about houseplants, just to keep up. In the trade, there's more stuff coming in every year. One of the unique plants is that they've got a big swollen base, right? And a couple leaves coming out the top, and I'm like, okay. The base was for ants. Ants would drill a hole in there, and the plant has these chambers in the swollen base that the ants will actually inhabit, come out, and if anything attacks the plant, they'll attack that. This is symbiotic or mutualism that occurs in the plant world. If you only have south-facing window and you really have something that doesn't like a lot of light, then move it away. If you move it like 2.5 to 3 foot away, you'll get nice, bright, indirect light, but you won't get direct sunlight. Unless it happens to be in the extremis, wintertime or summertime. Summertime, it's straight overhead. Wintertime, it sits to the side because of our 23-degree arc that the Earth wobbles on as it goes around the universe or around the sun. Okay, and also that, any questions regarding that? Yes, ma'am. Yes, air plant, bromeliad. We'll go over that. That's it. That's in our packet. Yeah. Hard to believe, but there are plants in the world that don't need medium. Okay. Does anybody know the term turgidity? Turgidity? That means a plant, if you don't water a plant, it kind of like droops. Okay, especially a very large leaf plant, if you don't water it, that's a good sign you might need to water, but stick your finger in there anyway. It's also a sign that it could be overwatered. So that's interesting. Provides oxygen into the roots. If you get overwatering, you have a problem with oxygen getting down to the root system because it's compacted soil. Now I have something that I take out every year in my garden for Colocasia, and it's called lime zinger. The leaves are almost like lime and they got green streaks in it. This thing is so hard you can't kill it. Well, you can, you just leave it out for frost and it'll die. But I bring it in every year, chop it down, let it grow up in the winter time. Then when spring comes, frosts are over, I bring it outside. And it's just something I do every year. And it started maybe about 15 years ago, and I've given out, tubers to everybody and anybody that wants them. Colocasia.
Excuse me, John, if somebody asks a question or asks them to repeat it because they can't hear.
Okay, you mean the young lady's question?
No, when someone asks a question, we repeat the question that we asked.
Oh, I'm sorry. Not familiar with this format. Apologies, please. Okay, supports growth of favorable microorganisms. I'm also a member of the Native Plant Society of New Jersey. npsnj.org. Write that down. Okay. They give lectures. They're free. They're about an hour long. I just attended a lecture, a Zoom lecture, and they do record this stuff on their website regarding mycorrhizal fungi. Very fascinating. The symbiotic relationship between microorganisms and the plants themselves. The plant provides the sugar to the microorganisms, and the microorganisms, which are attached to the roots, they provide them with organic materials such as, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, and other trace elements, calcium and things like that. So there's a symbiotic relationship. That's especially apparent in one of our native orchids out there, the pink orchid, lady slipper orchid. That's why people, when you see them in the environment, note the location, but do not dig them up. Do not dig them up, hoping to take them home and replicate what was there originally. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. I plead with you, if you got them in your yard, don't tell anybody. Because they'll be out there trying to dig it up. And the pips that you order are very expensive. That could be up to $100 for the pips. Okay, all they'll sell it to you, but they know in advance, unless you got the proper mycorrhizal fungi to help it out. They maybe come up one season and they're done. You never see them again. Garden loam, natural soil, pasteurized according to use. You can, if you make compost, you can use compost inside. But, and here's the thing, but it contains everything nasty, diseases, viruses, bacteria, springtails, worms, whatever. Okay, what you want to do in a case like that, you got an old pot you never use for anything because it's too damn big for you and your significant other. You take that, you load it up with the compost, spray it some water, put it on the outdoor grill and grill it for a while. When it cools down, put it in a plastic bag and use it. But you have few ingenious people who tried to put it in their house and do it that way. And it's not a good idea because you'll have a stinky house. You'll never, ever be able to get rid of that stench. Because it's all dead material. Yes.
I have a question, an orchid question.
All right, we're gonna get the orchids.
Okay, so.
There'll be a lot of orchid questions. And up here is culture sheets of some of the orchids that you'll find.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome to have a copy of anyone you want. Not to put your questions off.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Bag potting soil, everybody knows where they can get it. The big box stores have plenty of them. They have specialty bagged soils now. You know what's really hard to find? Bag soil without pre-fertilizer. And if you have houseplants like mine, especially in watering cases or what the hell they call it, bell jars or something like that, you don't want fertilizer in that because you got small plants. You don't want them growing out the top every 6 months. Okay, so that's very hard to find. Very, very hard to find soil that does not have.
Excuse me, I have a question regarding that. I had read something that you shouldn't buy Miracle-Gro plant food for that indoors. Is that true? That you should get like,
I'm not going to set up a rule here, okay?
Because they do have.
Because I don't want to be
fertilizer.
assassinated by the bagged potting
I
soil
understand
companies.
that.
No,
But it's-
I don't recommend it, except I have bagged stuff like that for outdoor stuff, which I'm going to put in there temporarily for the season. And by the end of the season, it gets thrown in the compost pile. So I'm going to use something that already has, because it's very difficult to find something that doesn't have that
I know,
fertilizer.
I know, everywhere you go, I mean, whenever I go looking for potting soil, it's always the Miracle-Gro. I was just,
There are some nurseries in the area and they're few and far between. I'm not going to start naming nurseries
No,
because
as
I'm
long as
sure
I-
it'll get back to, oh, you didn't name my nursery. So I'm not here for advertising. It used to be under Master Gardeners, we're not allowed to mention any brands or any, whatever. We don't have that stricture anymore, so I do have some that I use sparingly for that particular purpose, where I'm gonna have it in glass. And, I mean, I water these plants once every 8 months. Because it's a constant cycle. Plant transpires, puts water on the top of the canopy of the structure, and then comes down, and it's a constant cycle. So there's no, if I keep watering it, I'm gonna kill it. Okay, perlite. Perlite is heated volcanic rock. Perlite is great for lightening the soils. And it's white. It usually comes white. When I make my troughs, I use perlite. Concrete or cement, perlite, and a couple other things to make the trough. When I had my trough phase, I had 125 of the troughs. They're mostly for outside. But vermiculite, if you want something to hold water, vermiculite is excellent for holding water. And there are plants that like that. Sand, well, it's obvious there, ocean sand. Why wouldn't you want to have ocean sand? Well, it's salt. salt is an anathema to plants except specific plants that grow in marshes and stuff, or the dunes down at the at Ocean City. Peat moss. There's a controversy right now going on about peat moss. Peat moss is carbon sequestered material. And what happens when you dig it up? The carbon dioxide goes into the atmosphere, the carbon, which traps heat, which is why we have a problem with climate change. So I don't really like to use peat moss anymore. How many people live in a town where they collect the leaves? Can you contact the person that collects the leaves and ask for leaves in your yard if you want them? Perfect example for peat moss in your garden is leaves. In 18 months to 2 years of leaves sitting there, man, you'll have, when I built an outdoor rain garden, that's all I used, was leaves, because it replicates the natural conditions that, ponding area would have in soil. Sphagnum moss, again, it holds water like you wouldn't believe. Unfortunately, I had to leave it out for all winter long because it's humongous. Was this fern? I had it in a pot lined with the sphagnum moss, and it got a real bad case of bugs. I mean, I had to bring it in every time I watered it, and I had to take. I don't like spraying chemicals in the house. I'd take isopropyl alcohol with a Q-tip. It got to be an hour-long affair. And I finally said to myself, this is it. Because it started throwing out, the ants would come in, they would milk the goddamn bug, and then, they would take the bug off, put it on another plant. I'm like, nah, this is not for me. So but I did replace it. With another fern. Staghorn fern, I'm sorry, that's what it was. Composted pine bark. Okay, this could be used in orchids in a pot, besides the ceramic balls and other things that they use now. Okay, containers, plastic. I do not like to use plastic containers myself because it doesn't let the plant roots breathe. It doesn't usually have the heft to it to contain the plant, especially if you get a tall plant. There's a cacti that I took a cutting from mine at a house and took it to the library. It stands about 7.5 foot tall. And it's only been there for about 5 years. I'm already contemplating a day getting out there and having to chop off the top and the root. We'll talk about that later too, when we cover unglazed clay. That's what I love to use, clay. You'll go into the library and you'll see nothing but clay pots all over the place, except for the huge plants that I have in meeting room C. They're just humongous. They were all bought when they were like this, and somehow they're above my head. Don't ask me what happened. It was the same plants that I bring in as cuttings or divisions from my home plants are doing better at the library than they do at my house. I can't figure it out. Maybe it's everybody just breathing it. They love that. Okay. Glazed clay, it's not porous, so it'll act, especially you get these Vietnamese pots, they're all glazed on the inside. So you're not going to get anything coming on the outside. The only downside with unglazed clay is that you'll get leaching of the salts. Okay, if you take a rag and use white vinegar, you can scrape that off or whatever. When I go to a pot or I put a new pot and a plant in a new pot, I take the pot and let it sit for about a half an hour in bleach and water. Then I flush the pot, bring it in, let it dry out. You should do that with unglazed clay anyway, because if you put a plant in a non-watered pot that has a chance to absorb a little bit of water, it will take the water from the root system you just put in. So you want to make sure you just keep that pot You know, if you don't want to go out and put Clorox in, but I suggest if you take the pot, and you don't want to throw the pot away because they are expensive, put it in water with a little Clorox bleach, let it sit there for a while, dump the water, and then put it in clean water. Let it sit and then do your transplant or your up pot. Watering is important for all plant functions. That's true. This year I went to the Pennsylvania Rock Garden Society, and to my amazement, for cheap, $2.50, they had a plant from South Africa that does not almost require water at all. I water once every 2 months, and it has to drain quickly. It's living stone plant, Lithos. Very interesting. I can't wait to see what daisy-like blossom is going to come out of this. And see, what's interesting to note, you notice most orchids flower in the wintertime? Does anybody know the reason why? Because they're tropical, south of the equator. Down there now, it's summertime. What, you know what I mean? So they're used to that.
What happened to now?
They just do. It's genetic. It's genetic. Okay, water transports nutrients from roots and food from photosynthesis that occurs mainly in leaves. Okay. Oh, there's the word turbidity. Okay. That keeps plants erect. Okay. Any questions regarding this page? None? Moving on. High humidity. Certain things like high humidity. Tropical plants do, cacti don't, but somehow they get along. I got them both in my sunroom. A 10 by 20 foot, space that I have a lot of plants. Fungal diseases, high humidity will promote that. Red spider mite and other fungal diseases. Well, red spider mite is actually an arthropod. So. Low humidity, let the tips turn brown, the leaves dry out, the buds and flowers drop off. Okay, that could be another reason why your Valentine's Day Phalaenopsis didn't really open up the buds. And you have it in that room with the wood stove, right? Okay. This pretty much is self-explanatory. I'm going to go through this because this is a 3-hour course, but I don't want to. Okay. Improper watering, the most frequent reasons for indoor plant death. I have a schedule. My orchids get watered every 7 to 10 days, preferably on a day that is sunny out. And that's the reason you want that water to evaporate off the leaves of the orchid. Okay. My cacti and succulents get watered once a month. If I miss a day or two, it goes over. It's no big deal. They don't die. Okay. Now, in the summertime, I'll increase that for cacti and succulents to once every 3 weeks. Orchids, again, 7 to 10 days in the summertime. I used to have a pergola, but it got taken out by the 65-foot maple tree. Now I don't have a pergola anymore, so I have no place to put my orchids out in the summertime. I'm working on it. So do not stick to schedule. I'm a rule breaker. Okay. Plant type, cacti and ferns. You're going to water ferns a lot more than you are going to water cacti. Plastic versus unglazed clay, that's self-explanatory. Medium type, that's self-explanatory. Room temperature. The higher the temperature, more the evaporation rate is. Like I said, I now have a lot of sun in that sunroom. And when it's 30 degrees outside, wind chills down to 20, it can get up to 82 degrees. I love it. And they love it. All right, canopy size. The more leaves, the more water loss. Should tell that to the plants I have in meeting room C. They're huge. Soil color, light color indicates dryness. Okay. Touch, feel if wet. please use your finger. Hydrometers work great. Okay? You can go deep with the soil, but you can't go, too far in with your finger. Leave turgidity. Well, that's an excellent thing. Relative weight. Yes, sir.
With the hydrometers,
They measure the water content of soil.
but with that, if you have low salinity in the soil, doesn't that?
Salinity, you mean salt?
Yeah, like if you put the hydrometer in, like distilled water, that doesn't have salt, it's gonna show.
That may be. Mine broke about 10 years ago, and I said, I don't need it anymore.
Yeah, so we found that to be an issue.
Oh, really? Did everybody hear that? That the hydrometer sometimes can be influenced by salt content in the soil? Yes, ma'am.
My question is related to the quality of the water. There aren't really very many plants that don't make tap water, right?
Okay, this is very important. We might be skipping over it, but we're gonna go through this anyway right now, since you brought that up. The type of water is important with all plants. Okay, especially orchids. Orchids are very sensitive to salts and urea. Okay, I'll go on the reason why it is. Whenever I water my orchids, I have city water. There's chlorine in that water. Agitate the water. Beat the water up. I have an agitator at the sink in the kitchen. I turn it on spray, leave it on spray, and then I dump it in, take a little, that I don't use anymore, one of those spatulas or whatever, and just shake it up. As you know, chlorine is very volatile. It just whacks right out of it. But if you agitate the water, you'll get rid of that. Now the problem is if you don't have city water, which means you have well water. So what's in the well water? Because you have a softener, salts. That's a problem. Two choices you could do. You could buy distilled water, or you can get rainwater. Hello? You can get rainwater and bring it in to water your salt-sensitive plants. Good question. Anybody have any other questions regarding water quality? Yes, ma'am.
So could you just, I really only have one, could you just, let the water sit out for like overnight or something?
Not with salt.
How about putting chlorine?
Yes, you could do that. You could put it in an old Pepsi bottle with the cap on it. Do that rumbling, like Charlie Chaplin. It looked like he was crying and he actually was making himself a cocktail. That's a great scene. Yeah, do that. Just agitate the water. That's a good way to get rid of it. But if you're pressed for time, and I like to water orchids, set them in water, it's not cold, a little bit lukewarm. Okay, which begs the question is, why do you see people put ice cubes in orchids? I have no idea. They're just lazy. They don't want to take time for their orchids. I'll just put a couple ice cubes in there. Imagine someone taking you up to the Arctic, stripping your clothes off and throwing you out on an ice floe. You think you'd enjoy that? No, they're tropical plants. They've never encountered ice cubes. Why would anybody think by putting ice cubes in orchids would do anything for them? Yes.
They do it because people have told them that water out too much, just give them the equivalent of like the ice cube.
Let me ask you a question. Every 7 to 10 days, you put the pot in a container that has water, or you go to the faucet and run the water through it. Yes, ma'am.
And they give you a little tag with the orchid, it's called an ice orchid. I've been a plant grower for years, but I didn't know what else to do. Now, I will say to you that, I'm going to say this without question, my orchid is a blooming, but I'm in there with ice cubes and I'm going, this is really.
It's counterintelligence. I mean, I just don't understand it.
So you just soak it.
I soak mine. It takes me 2 hours every week to water the orchids.
Well, if you want to wait, you can, but how long?
I've
do you
lost
let it-
count.
How long do you let it sit in the water?
10 to 15 minutes, depending the variety. Depending the variety.
It's a phalaenopsis.
Phalaenopsis, Cymbidium orchids I have, a couple slab orchids. I'll soak them a little longer. Slab orchids, I'll sit there and soak them for a good 20 minutes. Good 20 minutes.
Excuse me, I have a general watering question. Should you agitate for all houseplants or for the chlorine content? or is it
I
just-
only do it
Because I
for
don't
the
have-
orchids because they're
Okay.
really sensitive to salts and
Okay,
they're sensitive to urea, but I'll cover that when I get to the orchids.
why, I don't know, I'm not I'm talking about regular houseplants.
No, you could use I use lukewarm water anyway.
So what I do is I fill my watering can and I let it sit for a couple days and then I water my plants.
Okay, that seems
That's
fine.
okay?
You could put a little, boil a kettle on the thing, put a little bit of hot water in there, to get it up to a lukewarm level,
Oh, okay.
and that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, yellow leaves, fertilizers, leach out of pot or not enough water to take up nutrients. Well, you should also put your plants on a regular fertilizing schedule. I fertilize my orchids, not my orchids, they get fertilized once a month, no matter what. The cacti and the succulents in March, I give them one application of a balanced four cacti and succulents. They get a balanced, and I'll talk about the variety of fertilizers you can use. Leaf drop, we talked about that. There's the answer for that, it's survival method. Tropical hibiscus are renowned for bringing them indoors from the outside and killed off all the insects that are on them. They'll drop their leaves. Don't get discouraged. Keep watering, keep observing, and they should come back if they're not got insects on them. Soil shrinkage, yes. You keep adding water, you don't fertilize, the plant itself is taking stuff out of the pot, the medium, to fulfill its needs. So eventually, you're going to have to up pot. You're going to have to move it to a different pot. There's an interesting story about fertilization with that. While I was on the helpline, okay, we still have that, do we, Mary? The helpline? Yes. Okay, this guy called in a frantic. He had a Mingorelia, about 6 foot tall. He loved the plant. He had it for 20, 30 years. So I went to the store to get fertilizer. And he picked up the thing of it and he asked the college age kid there, how much should I put on it? The kid told him, I don't know, some kind of amount. So he did without reading the package. Okay, he didn't read the package. He gave about 3 or 4 times the required amount. So all of a sudden the leaves dropped off. What should I do now? Well, I said to him, what I would do, take your plant outside and remove all the soil and put new soil back in and see if that helps. There's nothing more I can tell you. You've burnt the roots. You can burn the roots. It's like going to Geek's Diner and ordering 15 meals and trying to eat them all at once. You're not going to feel too good by the end. Same thing with plants. Give them what they require. And it says right on the package. And I even will do less than that. I will do less. If it says a tablespoon, a little shy of a tablespoon, just on the safe side. And most orchids that we get this time of year, the Phalaenopsis, okay, they are highly, highly fertilized almost every time they're watered. They got optimal conditions, humidity, and the greenhouses and stuff, and they get the fertilizer, and you go to the store and you buy this blue orchid, right? Anybody see them? They haven't seen them? Well, they stopped selling them things. But people are like, oh my God, it's a blue orchid. It's a Phalaenopsis. There is no blue Phalaenopsis. Okay? What they do is they stick the damn pot in dye. It absorbs up to the roots and into the plain white flower. So next time it blooms, it'll be plain white. It's just a gimmick, but people buy it. On the water, okay, overwater, we talked about that. Soft water, water softeners, using sodium to remove. Well, the problem with that is it's great for our drinking, but not good for the plant. Hard water, sorry, hard water, less of a problem by plants, mainly have excess calcium and will build up with crusty deposits inside of ponds. Yeah. Like I said, if you get a problem where you have a clay pot you like and you want to keep it or whatever, you could use a little vinegar on it to kind of like clean that off. Or it's just a veneer, a patina that you get used to. All my pots at the library, basically, except for the large ones, are all clay pots. Love clay. Municipal water, high in chlorine. We're not even for that. Leaf burn, thumb chlorine, peace like lily, thumb cane, agliomas are sensitive. Yes, they are. To resolve 3 problems, okay, in a bucket and leave stand for 24 hours. And most chlorine will dissipate out of the water. Chlorine will not dissipate. I don't know too many municipalities put chlorine in the water. It's expensive. Submersion, that's what I do with my orchids. Top watering, I won't water my succulents and cacti and top water, but I take them to the sink and I water them there, and they drain completely. I don't have root rot anymore. When you start growing these cacti from seed and you spend a lot of time getting them up, only to see them get all mushy and stuff, it's because you probably overwater or letting water stand in the pot or the bowl or saucer it sits on. I don't have any of that. Bottom watering, plants like African bottoms and Streptococcus and just nereids, they love bottom water. But again, you have to be careful with that. And the reason being is they don't like the water on the leaves, they get mushy. Okay, they actually make pots for African violets that actually have a saucer that water is applied to, and it has certain, I don't know, wick things in it that allows the water gently to come up and be used that way. Yeah.
I've always read that you're supposed to just not get it on the leaves.
Well, they're from Africa and they're down in the canopy. They're way down. Not a lot of light and not a lot of wet.
So it's not
Right.
proper.
Of course, mankind takes it out of the forest, brings it into cultivation through generation to generation. Now it's very sensitive to water standing in it. Water shouldn't stand in anything, cacti or orchids, because you should water your orchids early in the morning. I water my plants early in the morning. I don't water anything past 12 o'clock because I want that water to be gone off the leaves. And you get a Phalaenopsis. I have ones that are like 15 years old and they're in the pots and they turn down when they grow out like this, and they top hat too. When you get them in the stores, they're all top hat. That's how they put a collar around it to keep foliage up. But in nature, they'll actually point downward. The reason for that is the rainfall comes down to the canopy, onto the medium, and they attach themselves at the nooks of branches and stuff like that. They don't want, they know instinctively, get rid of that water, dump it. They don't want the water released because water has a tendency to invite bacteria and fungi and other things. Wick watering, we talked about that. Fertilization, NPK, nitrogen. Nitrogen is for green growth. Okay, nitrogen is for green growth. Phosphorus is for roots, and potash is for flowers. Now, I get cacti and succulent fertilization that basically has low nitrogen, because I don't want the growth. I promote soft growth. Cacti, you don't want soft growth. With orchids, I'll get something on the order of 30, 10, 10. 30 because they live in nitrogen deficient potting medium and in the forests, tropical forests. However, my Cymbidium orchid requires a different fertilization between October and February every year to get them into bloom. So instead of the 30, 10, 10, I'll give it 6, 30, 30, which promotes bloom growth, and it works. Cacti, I will only give 1, 7, 6, and maybe a little calcium. There's this liquid stuff that I add a capful around March, and you can give it a little bit once a month if you want to in the summertime when you get a lot of growth. They enjoy traces of calcium and other things in the mix. It's called jungle juice, I think it's called. You get it on Amazon. Again, I'm not promoting Amazon, but it's a place to get it. And any of these other orchids, bromeliads and air plants, I give a formulation of 17, 8, 22. 17, 8, 22. They don't like other plants. Their roots are strictly for anchoring the plant. They do not uptake any nutrients from the roots. So they require substantial amounts of nitrogen and or not too much in the way of phosphorus because they don't have roots too much, but 22, which is the potash for flowers. And they do have gorgeous flowers, bromeliads. Even the air plants have gorgeous flowers in shades of pink, purple, blue. They get watered once a week along with my orchids. They just sit in that for like 30 minutes. I take them out, shake them off, and let them sit on a towel for about a couple hours, and then I put them back in the place where they came from. What's interesting about bromeliads is they have a vase-shaped growth habit. And usually in the middle is a water well. And mosquitoes breed in there, and frogs breed in there, lay their eggs in. It's amazing. Another form of mutualism. Okay? Amazing. I can't read that. You guys got that.
You can't read it either.
Yeah, I can't even read my own. Even with glasses, I have a tough time. Okay. Peter's Professional. That's that blue stuff, turns the water blue. That's good for regular houseplants. It's usually a 1-1-1 ratio. And last thing, always read the package instructions. I can't emphasize that enough. You can get it in a soluble form of granules, crystals that dissolve in water. That's what Peters is. That's what my orchid fertilizer is. Add the water. Liquid. This jungle juice for cacti and succulents. That's what that is. Slow release. I know Lorraine Keith was down at Triple Oak. She really loves that stuff. Puts it down, forget it. It'll last 3 months. Now I use that in my bogs where I have bog orchids. Okay, and I don't want to feed the other bog plants because they come from low nitrogen soil, peat moss or whatever. And I've just dressed the top, just as they start to emerge from the soil, the little bog orchids, lady tresses, they come out late September, early October. It actually looks like a woman's hair. It's another orchid. Well, there's so many orchids in New Jersey that we just overlook, other than that lady slipper orchid that came from. Slow release, spikes. I used them back in the day. I don't use them anymore. I do use, what's that stuff called, Mary? You know, it's like in a tan pill form of them. Osmocote, that's it. Again, I'm not a salesman for Osmocote, but that's a slow release. They'll give you 3 months worth of, 3 to 4 months worth of fertilization. Again, caveat number 1, always follow package descriptions or directions. Apply to moist soil to avoid root burning. I always use mine, especially for indoor plants. I use the dissolving in water technique. Yes.
Question, the Osmocote, can you just put that on the top, or do you have to kind of dig it?
You can dig it in either way.
You can do.
You can do
put
it
on the
either way. You
top,
can leave it on the
okay.
top, which I do all the time, or because it has when it gets watered, it has an ability to release its fertilizer very slow into the soil. But if you dig around, just apply it.
Yeah.
Because-
sometimes it's hard to
yeah.
do. I put it on top, I didn't know whether.
Yeah,
that
you could
was-
do that. You can do that. Water it on.
Please insert the external mic.
They want you to talk louder.
Louder?
Yes.
Put it in my mouth. I thought it was always too loud. Okay. I don't really, except for my orchids, I don't really fertilize succulents or the cacti or even the large leaf plants. I'm coming up on this bird of paradise, which is hitting the ceiling at the library. They're not, I think they're 9-foot ceilings. It's just huge. I think it ate a couple of children on the way, you know, over the years. Never found them. No, seriously. I will fertilize them once a year. Usually just at the start of the growing season, late March, early April. I will fertilize, I just thought of another Thanksgiving and Christmas cacti. About a month before they blossom, give them a little dose of fertilizer, help them along. I got ones, you're not gonna believe this, I got ones that I got for the library. They've been in bloom since October of last year and they're still blooming now. I can't figure it out. I don't even know whether they're Christmas cactus or Easter cactus or whatever, but seriously, they just bloom on their own. I don't know, conditions must be just right for them. All right, newly purchased plants that are healthy should not be fertilized for 2 to 3 months. Okay, I would not buy a plant and then start giving it fertilizer. Watch it, look at it, see what it does before you decide to give it fertilizer. One thing I will recommend, I just bought myself a golden honey bird's nest sansevieria, and it was beautiful. But the place I bought it from, they water damn sansevieria. They must water it every other day. I picked up Bentel Sensation, which is a beautiful, beautiful, it's mesmerizing, sansevieria. I picked it up and the thing's wobbling. I pressed the soil, I'm like, there's overwater. You bring it home, it's probably dead inside of a couple of weeks. Of course, I didn't buy that plant. Also, when you go to pick a plant out at the store, if you can, separate the pot from the root ball. If it comes out easily, then it's root bound, and you're going to have to transplant it to a different pot. But let the golden honey dry out. You're not going to kill it. Sansevieria, they need water once a month. Sometimes not even that. I know a couple of horticultural friends, they put them down in their basement, don't even water them. I don't know how they live, but they do. Okay. Again, winter months, you shouldn't fertilize much except for my orchids. Repotting is needed with outdoor containers. When you take the root ball out, and it's like, it looks like a popsicle stick. Everything's adherent to it. There's nothing left in the thing. That's the time you get a repot. And any plant, you should take a straight edge or knife or whatever you use, and you should tease the roots apart gently all around the root ball. Because if you put it back in another larger pot, put soil in there, the plant only knows the closet that he was in. He doesn't know the living room he's in now. Okay, so when you cut the roots a little bit and spread the root ball out and then put soil in it, now it knows to try to go out in the surrounding soil. You should do that when you buy plants for your outdoors too. When we had the landscaping done in 2009 by a professional landscaper, he sent out a bunch of guys that didn't know anything from anything. And they just plopped the burlap trees in the soil and did not cut the burlap away. So what do you think happened when we had derecho come through? Derecho, by the way, is a direct wind. We had a few of them. That's what took out my maple tree. And it came through and took out this lovely gold star spruce. It was just a beautiful thing. And it came down and the root ball was attached. It was like this around. So I put out word to the buildings and grounds, people to come out and take care of this, to bring it back into the soil. Well, to my amazement, they came out and chainstalled it. That's like, I got a little scab on my leg and the surgeon says, we're taking your leg. I mean, like, really? We had one of our librarians die and I put in a nice, beautiful buddleia, plant for it, beautiful, spectacular, right? What happened? Buildings and grounds came out. Man, weed whacker. I was like, God, what is wrong with these people? None at all. So repotting is necessary. I just repotted 35-year-old cacti by myself. And I'll tell you what, that was a trip. Okay, so what I took, I folded the newspaper around, grabbed it so I could handle it without getting needles in
Look
my.
matted. Break them up before repotting. Break them up. See that?
Yeah, well, you knew that.
Yeah, I know
The
that.
guy on Gwen's iPad, you're blocking out the presentation. Can you mute?
I don't understand.
Chuck, Chuck, mute.
Yeah, break up the root system, is that what you're talking about? The other thing is the pot size, if you got the plant in a 6-inch pot, you don't want to move up to a 14-inch pot. Just move up one size larger. Okay. The cacti that I did, I moved them up, they've been in the pots for 30 years. So I had a real big thing on that. I wrapped the paper around it to hold it so the thing wouldn't attack me with the needles. I put it out on the floor on paper, and then I hacked the roots a little bit, got fresh soil in there and put a nice gravel collar on it. That's another thing with cacti. Make sure, and even succulents, some succulents, put a gravel collar on it, maybe about 1 inch thick. That's good because it allows the egress or entry of water and it doesn't hang around the bottom of the plant. Do not fertilize for 2 to 3 months. That's correct. What is an epiphyte? Orchids are usually, the ones that grow in the trees are epiphytic. In other words, their natural growth, they grow in the branch crooks where some organic debris will, and the seed, you ever seen an orchid seed? Anybody here like vanilla bean ice cream? At the end of the dish, you got all those little specks. That's an orchid seed. See how small it is? They don't have no gymnosperm to feed they need mycorrhizal bacteria specific for that particular orchid species in order to thrive and even to germinate. Some air plants are apathetic. Mistletoe is parasitic. It takes from the plant and gives nothing in return. They grow naturally in the woods around here. By the way, that is not a house plant, mistletoe. They call it mosses, liverworts, lichens, algae, ferns, cacti, orchids, and bromeliads. All of them can be epiphytic. Okay, general foliage plants, begonias, gesneriads, orchids, bromeliads, succulents, cacti, and ferns. So we'll reach in every one. Okay, we've got a list there. Does anybody have specific questions regarding this list? Everything has a lifespan. I have a sequoia cactus. Raised it from seed. It is 40 years old and it's 18 inches tall. They live for 200 years. Probably, I'll precede them in death. They could put them in the coffin with me. My daughter will take them. Anything about this group? General foliage plants? Believe me, I've had probably all
So are there some of these more common house plants? Should like, so if they start to bubble.
of them. Well, I'll tell you, Calais has a short life, especially if you leave it out in the frost. I take cuttings. Calais, root them in water, one of the few plants that readily root in water, pot them up and put them on the windowsill. And then I'll try and pot them out to bigger pots in the summertime. I had the fortunate, this guy is just, he's a wonder. Guy Steve, he's from Willingboro. I went to his garden last year, garden party. And he has more tropical plants in his garden outside than I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, just in amazement of this guy's garden. And you walk around this 4.5 acre thing, and it's like a forest. I don't know how he keeps this stuff alive, but he does. But he takes a lot of cuttings and he brings it indoor and takes it out. He's just amazing. Something to aspire to. Dumb cane on that list. You know why they named dumb cane? Because it's called Diefenbach in German. If you cut it, put it in your mouth, you won't be able to talk. Dumb cane. Spider plant, well, we all know that, with macrame pot holders from the 60s and 70s. Wandering Jew, peperoma species, they enjoy high humidity. You can put them in a watering case or something like a domed thing. They grow really well. I have a couple of them at the library. Variegated and pothos with devil's ivy. I have ones that's called marble, and it looks just like marble almost, green and white. And I have one called neon. It is beautiful. Roots readily in water. I can't give them away. Does anybody want to take a break now? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Sound good? Okay. 10 minutes. Back by 10:30, I guess. That's right.
Click that off,
Click one off.
the microphone, and we'll put it back on again.
Here's the.
Oh, no, thank you.
Yes.
You're missing every fifth word.
It's my fault.
All right, well, maybe you could show me where to increase the volume of this. I don't know.
I think it's on here.
Because this was pretty far away from you. You could maybe put that right, so that's closer to you.
You can see the tension just kind of down. Yeah, I apologize.
No, it's my fault.
No, no.
Question, what needs 30, 10, 10 fertilizer?
I'll go over a little bit more important about the urea factor. Urea is a salt. Soluble
You know
salt.
what, you shouldn't tell me about this, because I can't, I can't. I don't think so.
You know, people tell me, it's like meditating. Oh, I can't meditate. Well, my one is, everybody goes on the beginning. You get used to
No,
it.
I've been through it. Just so-
I told my husband, I said, send me a picture and then I'm sure.
So you know.
Oh, that's right.
It looks like.
Mary, hey, Mary, you might want to mute. We can hear you. I can't. I wish I could.
You don't necessarily have to do that. What illumination do you have? Oh, okay, what kind of? Fluorescent?
next week, we're gonna have to compete. If we have it, I think we have Camden next week, or we're at. But you're not at school, it's not as your computer's going, we'll have the presentation. And one, I have your questions for the Zoom back.
Okay,
I.
okay. Is this like an indoor plant?
Now, Camden is presenting some of, you can come here and see and watch it. You can watch it, you can come here and watch it.
And it withstands our freezes and frosts and stuff?
No.
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen. Casting more questions on people already.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna get ready to start up again.
We're ready to start again. Unfortunately. Okay. Are we on, Mary? I'm sorry? Yeah. Anybody in the home audience can hear you?
Yes, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been told that because of the way this is done, you people at home that have questions, we might not be able to answer them because of technology deficiencies. If you submit your questions to Mary in her email, she will submit them to me and then I'll respond back to Mary and give you an answer specific to your question at a future date, unfortunately. Okay. She's right now writing down the email. Okay, her email is mcummings, CUMMINGS, co.gloucester.newjersey.us. .nj.us. Okay, Mary Cummings, M Cummings, co.gloucester, GLOUCESTER, .newjersey.us. That's her.
I don't want to type out New Jersey.
Oh. At the end of Gloucester, where is a dot, put NJ, not New Jersey, .us.
Put it in the, if she puts it in the chat, we'll all see it.
I have no control over the Zoom meeting right now, other than to meet people.
Oh, great. Yes, begonias. Yeah, I was just thinking that. Cane-like begonias.
I'm sorry, are the people at home able to get the handouts? Is that possible?
We're working on that. It's too large of a document to email, so I'm working on how to get it out to everybody. This is all new for us, and we just don't have the technology available for what we need to do.
Okay, did you get that? They can't send this out in an email because it's too large. They're trying to get the documents to you at a future date. Excuse me, at a future date.
We plan on putting them in the mail.
Plan on putting them in the mail and mailing them out to people.
Perfect. Thank you.
I put Mary Cummings' email address in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, cane-like begonias, rhizomatous begonias, semperflorons, tuberous begonias, and rex begonias. Not really familiar too much with the cane-like begonias. I've seen a few of them over the years. They're very nice. Leaves come out. I think one's called an angel begonia. It has canes, obviously. Rhizomatous, they have a deep-rooted system. and they come out with nice colored leaves, semperflorons. I'm not too familiar with that. Tuberous begonias. Tuberous begonias, you could start in the spring, put them out in hanging pots. They like cool weather. Okay, they do not do well in hot weather. So if you got them out there, make sure you put them in a nice shaded place. They should be shaded anyway. Rex begonia is probably the most spectacular leaf plant out there. They come in all kinds of colors. People that are present, this place I dealt with for many years, they have a lot of stuff. It is very expensive and the plants are small. You're welcome to take your catalog, purvey, do whatever you want with it, line your kitty litter box or whatever you need with it. But you can get an idea of what they have for sale and what's out in the trade. That's why I keep these things instead of throwing it away. Because a trade every year to get new stuff in all the time. But they've got begonias in here that are just spectacular. Very difficult. I had problems with the Rex begonias. I don't know why, they just didn't do too well for me. Maybe they don't like the cacti. They don't get along. I don't know. So. Okay. Oh, angel wing begonias, right. Okay. Bamboo-like appearance. Nice plant. Again, they love water, but they don't like to sit in water. Rhizomatous begonias. Usually you see these guys in offices. When I used to work for the police department, the county or the court clerks used to have a lot of these in their offices. Semperflorens, everybody's seen these things. They'll actually grow up to be as large as a shrub. In fact, you can plant these things out in the summertime. A waxy type. Tuberous begonias, again, beautiful flowers and everything like that, but they kind of punk out on this hot weather. They don't like hot weather. Rex begonias. The picture really doesn't do that leaf justice. I mean, they come in almost all kinds of colors. They're just gorgeous. But like I said, I have a problem in growing them. They like high humidity, but they don't do well for me. Or maybe I'm not doing it the right way. Okay, just nereids. African violets, Cape primrose, flame violet, lipstick plant, goldfish plant. All in the same family. Look, bottom watering, don't water them from the top. That's what I can tell you about it. And they almost need constant fertilization, especially African violets. They need to be fertilized. I had a beautiful one in the library. It just bloomed continuously until it got a case of mealybug and then just conked out on me.
I had a goldfish plant, and they really look like goldfish. Like little
Yeah.
Crackers, but it bloomed one time,
You-
and it was just 2 leaves.
You can see these things at Longwood Gardens. Ever go there? If you've never been there, please go. It's just beautiful the way they take care of stuff. It's just tremendous. 2,500 species of plants, African violets. In the 1800s, 1800s, it became a big thing in England, African violets, and people were paying thousands of pounds for plants like this. They were quite the rage. But they require quick drainage. They don't like to sit in water. They make pots specifically for these types of plants that actually wick it from the pot itself, or the saucer itself, and then into the plant. So it's not water from the top down, because the leaves have a tendency, if they're wet, they rot. Oh my God, orchids. All right. Here's the superstar of the program. There are 36,000 naturally occurring orchids in the wild. Their flowers are some of the most advanced flowers in the world. Some resemble female wasps and put out a scent that attracts the male wasp who comes along and pollinates the plant. Okay, you've got vanilla orchids, which are derived from South America. Vanilla orchids are imported to Madagascar, which has the best vanilla flavoring ever. Problem is, and they have no natural pollinator in Madagascar, so they have to be hand pollinated. That's a tedious task. And then they have to be left on the ground to cure. If they're not stolen, they have a big problem over there in Madagascar where there are vanilla thieves that just steal the vanilla. The little beans that you see in the end of your ice cream there, that is the actual seed. Nobody I know of in the culture grows orchids from seed anymore. It required the seed to be placed in agar and grown. It takes years. They just take meristem cloning, the new genetic techniques that they use now, the crosses. I was at Longwood Gardens a couple years ago. There was one orchid that had 4 separate crossings to make this one orchid. The more you cross an orchid, the less chance you have of any aroma, any scent coming from the orchid. The only exception I had is at one point, way long ago, I had the Catalina orchid. And when it bloomed, it was just ungodly. It was ungodly. The Cymbidium orchid that I have is a hybrid now, so it has no scent at all. Phalaenopsis orchids, no scent at all. There is a very interesting orchid down in the Florida Keys, or not the Keys, but the Florida Everglades. It is called the ghost orchid. It blooms, but it has no leaves. Just a root system that attaches to the tree. And they're zealously guarded by the National Park Service. That if you're a researcher, you can actually, they'll take you to the location. But you actually have to sign a waiver that if you divulge the location, because you've got orchid enthusiasts that will rip these things from the bark itself to try to grow them at home. Bad idea. Enjoy them while they last. But Darwin, when he saw one of these things in bloom, he theorized that there had to be a moth that had a huge proboscis and tongue, because this had, the nectar was way down, like almost like 12 to 15 inches down. Well, how the hell does a pollinator get down to get the nectar? There has to be a moth. But see, that's where the problem with nature is. If it has a specific pollinator and that pollinator dies, the orchid's screwed. It has no way to pollinate that particular, get pollinated by a particular insect. But it's a very fascinating, like I said, 36,000 naturally occurring orchids from every continent except Antarctica. I'm not sure if the Arctic has it. Maybe in the summertime they might have 1 or 2 orchid species up there, but most of them occur in tropical situations. Most orchids that are from tropical situations will bloom in the wintertime north of the equator. Okay, why? Because that's their synchronicity. That's when they bloom in nature. So they held on to that. Vanilla is an orchid. Okay. Okay, Catalina, Cymbidium, Dendrobium, Phalaenopsis, Papillium, and Oncidium. I have culture papers here. You're welcome to take whatever you need. Unfortunately, I can't do the at home. I can leave a supply with Mary and she could pass them out if someone comes to her office. That's all I could do for her, for that. Let's take each orchid at a time. Catalina orchid. The beauty about their large corsage orchid. If you remember the proms from yesteryear, 50 years ago or more, the guy would buy a corsage orchid, or they would have a strap of orchids on their arm, and that orchid was the Cymbidium orchid. Cymbidium orchids. They're beautiful. Mine's in bloom right now. It's just amazing. The flower stalk is like 2 foot long and it has approximately, at last count, 17 blooms, about the size, I guess, of my fist. Dendrobium, cane-like. I have one at home and one at the library. It blooms, named after my oldest daughter, Jennifer Ann. It blooms whenever it wants to. So it's not very often does it bloom. Phalaenopsis, that everybody knows is a moth orchid. You can get that anywhere, any big box store they sell them. The prices are, I don't know. They're getting to be crazy. Paphiopedilium, paps as we call them. They're almost like the lady slipper orchid, but they don't like a lot of light. They like high humidity. They do well in Wardian cases and domed.
Low battery, please charge.
Low battery, please charge. Okay. Okay. They enjoy high humidity and not a lot of direct sunlight. Oncidium, they're a very pretty orchid. I had one, but it didn't last very long, maybe about 5 years, and it was done. They usually come in flowers that are brown and predominant yellow background. And they have a tendency to have a light stalk, and they kind of like dance. They kind of like dance. The blossoms actually dance. But hybrids, I can't even estimate how many there are hybrids in the world, because every year, like I said, we had one at Longwood. There's 4 different crossings. I don't even know how to do that. That's just crazy. Okay, see? Cattleya orchid. And they do last a while. I had one Phalaenopsis orchid in the library. It actually bloomed for 16 weeks. From the first bloom to the last one when it fell off, it was 16 weeks, 4 months. It's amazing. These guys don't live very long either. Maybe 7 years if you're lucky. Cymbidium orchids, they're the grass-like foliage. They take a little bit more light. I like to put mine out in the old dog pen with a canoe on top. They love buoyancy and the air. So I keep a fan in my sunroom running 24/7, just to keep the air moving. Also to wick off any moisture that might occur on the leaves. Dendrobium. Again, beautiful orchids. I'm starting to cut down on my orchid fever. That was in predominance 20 years ago, so I've just let the plants run their course. And when the lifespan ends, I just don't replace it anymore. It's just a lot of work, a lot of work. Phalaenopsis, everybody's familiar with this one. Right around Valentine's Day, that's when you'll find it, sitting on the shelf. And like I mentioned earlier about the dyed blue orchid. Okay, they sit and die for a week or 2 before they're shipped up north to incredulous northerners that just buy them up by the dozen. Just crazy. Paps, very interesting orchid, got that slipper going on. Oncidium, see the flower stalk? These guys will dance in the wind for you. If you have a fan running, they'll sit there and just like dancing dolls. And they have what they call, down at the swollen base of it is a pseudo bulb, which just stores water. So you don't want to overwater these guys. The survival mechanism. like I said, if you go up to Longwood Gardens up there in Pennsylvania, they have a room full of these guys. They're just beautiful. All right. Southern east facing windows work best for orchids. Yes. Okay, I would recommend if you've got Phalaenopsis to move them back about 2 foot to 3 foot from the window, bright indirect light. If you find that your Phalaenopsis leaves, which are very thick, strappy leaves, if they get too much sun, they will actually start to turn red and then they'll start to burn. They will burn. So you don't want to put them in direct sunlight all day long. Morning sunlight is fine, but not southern sunlight all day long. They will burn like you would believe. Insufficient light is a common cause of failure to rebloom your orchid. That and not putting it on a regular fertilizer schedule. These
Low
things-
battery, please charge.
These orchids do require fertilization program if you put them on. They should be light, come light yellow, a little bit of red, but not too much in the way of dark. If they're too dark green, they're not getting enough light. So it's a dance that you have to do. Avoid overwatering. Don't leave your orchids in water. Like I said, I use the submersion method for my orchids. It's easier that way. Take them out, drain them, put them back on the window or hanging from the basket on a hook. Water them in the morning if you can. Water them if the sunlight's out. But what do you do if you have nothing but rain and you don't have a chance to water them? Well, you know, I don't have that option with the library orchids. You know what? I've been watering for years on days that were sunny, days that were raining, days that were snowing, days that were cloudy. I just put them in submersion, take them out, drain them, and put them back where they belong. And they seem to be doing well. And they're on a fertilizing schedule once a month. Problem with overwatering is you cause the roots to rot. Now, orchids they have a thing on their root system, their aerial root system. Not only does it attach to the pot or to the branch nook that it's hooked on, but they also have a covering called vellum, which will disappear when you water the aerial roots. That's how it gets its nutrients and its water. There's some discussion of whether or not fertilization on the leaves by, splashing it up on the leaves will actually absorb some of the fertilizer into the leaves or not. I don't know the answer to that. Okay. Other than the fact is I do fertilize mine once a month. Okay, they're suggesting 20. I get mine, it's 30, 10, 10. Comes in all things, but one thing that I did mention earlier in the program about urea, and we all know what urea is. I don't have to tell anybody what it is. Okay, it's urine derived from livestock or something like that. Contains salts. Orchids do not like salt. So when you buy a fertilizer, make sure it doesn't have urea in it, which probably won't. Okay, and you can buy it from any place at all, big box stores, Amazon, whatever. Okay, repotting, as you probably can notice in the bottom right picture there, see the roots? When you repot, if you're using fir bark, you need to push that stuff down hard, push it down. And maybe wrap it the first couple of months with twine or something like that to keep the plant centered. And the reason for that is you let the aerial roots then go out, find the pot, adhere to the pot, and then it maintains itself. Again, when you water the natural, especially with Phalaenopsis, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think we were on the air at the time. The tendency of the Phalaenopsis over the years is to actually progress out of the pot and downward. That's not a defect, that's a natural thing. And that's to allow water to run off the leaves. It knows enough that if it was upright, like when you buy them, those notches in the leaves will sit in have water sitting there all night long, and that's when you'll have rot. I don't get many questions about orchids. Did I answer everybody's question about orchids? Okay. Fast draining, water retentive material. I use fir bark, which usually packed with charcoal, large chunks of perlite, and fir bark. At one time, long ago when I first started, used to use redwood mulch.
Low battery, please charge.
Redwood mulch. And there's only one way you can get redwood mulch is if you cut down a redwood tree. I stopped using that stuff a long time ago. That was 40 years ago. Okay. Phalaenopsis smorth orchids grows easily under the same conditions enjoyed by African violets. I don't think I've ever saw the slipper orchids out there for sale anywhere. Online might have them. You can buy them that way if you're really interested in the paps. Like I said, they do require, they don't require a lot of light, the low light orchid. And they require a lot of humidity. Sometimes you will put these in boarding cases or bell jars or something like that. Okay, these culture sheets that I have up here are all derived from the www.aos.org. And that is the website for the American Orchid Society. They've updated your site. You can get a lot of information off that site. If you just Google orchids for sale, you'll find a lot of places that have orchids for sale. I just recently did that this year just to get an idea where the price tag on some of these orchids are. I shuddered to think of spending $75 for an orchid, but there are collectors that do. And the last one is growing and caring for orchids. Okay, all one word. .com. We know that .com means it's a commercial site. They got something to sell. .org doesn't. Bromeliads, air plants, Spanish moss. I actually have Spanish moss right above a humidifier. They do very well. Oh yeah, it's a live plant. Oh, you didn't, did you? They got a lot of insects in it. Yeah, all things die. I bought mine from Air Plant Company. They had a sale going on. I bought 3 of them. And they're doing fine. I water them every week along with the air plants I have, because they are basically an air plant. Yeah, they do well. The buoyancy of the air helps out a lot. Pineapple. I don't know if you could still do it. I don't think Dole will let you. You cut off the top of a pineapple, plant it, and you get a pot. But I don't think you'll ever get a flower and then a pineapple on it. If anybody does, let me know. Makes a great plant. Okay, you can buy air plants really cheap. And like I said, the roots are not, they're just for anchoring purposes. They don't take any nutrients in the roots. So you have to keep them watered. You have to soak them. They have what is called trichomes on their leaves, which are a special adaptation to allow the leaves to absorb water from the humidity, rain, whatever. Okay. But they have to be dried out before they're put into place again. Again, I water my orchids, so it's early morning. And they're not expensive. You can buy them anywhere. Okay. The other ones, like I said, the spectacular blooms, and they're usually leaves. The flower itself is really deep set into the colored leaves. But the interesting thing is, once it flowers, the parent plant will die. But before it does, you'll see pups coming out the bottom of the plant. Okay, but the parent plant after flowers will die. Again, they're epiphytic and they're not something that would take any nourishment from the plant, host plant that it connects itself to. It's just there to capture the water and the nutrients that might head its way. Okay, trichomes are covered. Any questions about bromeliads? Oh, I just leave them on. Well, let the parent plant die down. Okay, and then just turn flush and just disconnect it, leave the pups grow. Excuse me. Okay. I've never encountered these in a trade. I don't know where this particular slide came from. I do know one thing. They occur in mesas down in South America, where they get a lot of rain, but a lot of drainage. Okay. I don't know much about these plants because I've never really encountered them that much in the trade. Tislandia, yeah, it's a form of bromeliad. It's called the air plant. We already covered much of that. Any questions regarding that? At home, if you have any questions about this stuff that we're covering very quickly now, you're welcome to give it the email to Mary, and then she'll send it to me, and I'll respond to it and send it back. One interesting thing, I think I mentioned, I don't know if it was on the air, about the vase containing water. There are microorganisms, there are large arthropods, ants, lizards, amphibians, reptiles that use the pockets of water for hydration, also for depositing their eggs. Very interesting mutualism that occurs there. Succulent plants. Somehow people relate succulents to cacti. They're not really, but they are moisture retentive. So they're very, very sensitive to overwatering. I take all my succulents to the kitchen sink, water them, drain them out, and then put them back in their saucers. I don't want them standing in water. Some of them produce flowers like calancho in the Christmas holiday. You can buy them in the store. Succulents occur around the world. They do have leaves that have swollen water. If you cut them, you'll see how moist they are. Also, the Sansevieria is classified as a succulent, so they don't require a lot of water. Last census I took about the Sansevieria, which is the mother-in-law's tongue, there are close to 96 different varieties of culture, and they're finding them all the time and hybridizing them now. There's only one caveat that I have about Sansevieria. When they flower, it is probably the most cloying, disgusting, sweet smell you'll ever. Flowering is very rare, thankfully. But I did have it one day, and I was like, what the heck is that smell? And there's these little flowers that opened up at night, white, sticky, and smelled to the hell high heaven. If you like, some people like skunk smell. Most of us don't. You might like this cloying smell, I don't know. But you can cut the flowers off if you don't like it. Aloe. Everybody's had an aloe plant once or twice in their life. There you go. I have a huge one. I call it the Kraken. It looks like a giant octopus underwater. It has these huge tentacles that go out with these ridges on it. It's like, I don't have any luck with that, but yet it does well in the library. You figure. Peperoma, down at the bottom right there is the peperoma. They love moisture. Yucca, which we have on the outside, and jade, the jade plant. Many different varieties of jade. Again, overwatering is not an option for these guys. Cacti. Okay. All cacti are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti. Think about the needles. The needles are modified leaves. It's to protect from predation from people, or people, even animals eating the leaves of these guys because they hold water. But I tasted it, it's very bitter. I don't think I'd ever want to cut into a cacti and try to drink from it. They do flower, but it's very rare on the inside to have a cactus flower. I had one that was 40 years old. They got too big, was pushing the suspended ceiling up. I cut it back a couple times and it got to the point where I said, can't do this anymore. So a couple side shoots I cut off, and then I cut the whole plant out, tossed it, and I had these offshoots. If you want to grow cacti, if it grows too big, you can always cut it, let it callus over for like 5 to 7 days, put it in moist sand and occasionally water it, the sand. And in about 6 months to 8 months, you'll have roots and you can pot it up, and that's it. That's what I did with mine. Now, instead of being over my head, it stands this high. And it'll go another 30 or 40 years. They grow very slowly. I have a, what's his name, cactus. You see it out there in the desert. It looks, it's got its arms up and everything like that. They survive for 200 years. Saguaro, thank you. I've got one that's 18 inches tall and it's 40 years old. It'll outlive me. They bloom at night. That's an interesting thing. Now, what do you think pollinates the blooms at night? Very good, bats. That's right. And they are really fragrant. I had one on this particular cactus that went up that I cut back and everything like that. One in all the years I had it. I don't know why I did it. It opened up at 10 o'clock. By 6 o'clock the next morning, it was done. But the smell was just unbelievable. Okay. Cacti occur only in the Western Hemisphere. North America, South America. There is one species that occurs in Africa at the tip. That just signifies that at one time the tip of Africa and the tip of South America came together and only one survived the transit. So when it's split, you do have cactus-like euphorbias. And that's a huge group. It includes poinsettias. They're the ones that you cut, they bleed white sac, which is usually poisonous. And many come from Madagascar where it's hot, very hot. Crown of thorns, that's a euphorbia. Any questions about euphorbias? Again, same watering conditions, water well, and then put it back. Don't water it again for about a month. And if you can see a cactus, we have a native cactus in New Jersey. It's an opuntia. They have the small things that you get in your hand, in your fingers, and you can't get them out. You use a pair of tweezers to pull them out. They actually occur naturally in New Jersey. Very, very bright yellow flower. And the Native Plant Society considers them to be a native plant. I have it in my yard, of course. Problem is, there are, I forgot the name of it, cacti people who go out in the deserts and rip cacti off, bring them back for sale. And you can spend thousands of dollars, you want to decorate your home out in the desert. I have a big problem with that. I don't really take anything from the natural environs and bring it in my garden. I like to see it where it's at. There's a place every year I go since May 1973, when I became a cop. I found it by accident. I was doing an investigation of an accident on the side of the road. I was sitting there doing a report. I looked over and I see pink over there. So I got out of my car, investigated, and dodged a lot of mosquitoes, but the place was just packed with these pink lady sliver orchids. So I don't tell anybody where it's at. It's a treat just for me. Don't take or leave anything. All right. Stapelia, I have that. It's related to this carrion flower. If you know anything about the carrion flower, carrion means dead meat. And that's what it smells like, but not the Stapelia I have at home. In fact, I just divided it up. I took a couple to the library, gave a couple to relatives. Star of David. I don't think I've ever, anybody ever get one of those plants, run across them? Yes? Oh. Yeah, but it's not a cactus. All right. Yeah, the Orioles are interesting thing is that the needles occur at these junctures. And usually it's a group of cactus called Mammillaria that these Orioles occur from. Flowers, they are very fragrant on a cactus, usually at night when they get pollinated for reasons we know of. I have a big Ripsalis. They are epiphytic cacti that at one time their ancestors were on the ground and they decided they didn't like it that much. They were stepped on by different things. So they decided they were going to mount themselves in trees, and that's where they wound up. And they're interesting. They have very, 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 very tiny, soft needles. Okay. And very bright yellow flowers. The one I had just got done blooming, and the seed pods look like little clear or pearls. It's an interesting plant. And they root ready. Any questions? Showy cactus, you do not want to go near this thing. They call it the jumping cactus for reasons. If you fell into one, you're going to wish you never had. Prickly pear, that's what we have in New Jersey. Not quite as large. You might not recognize it as a triple oaks at one time had different kinds of cactus that survive up here. They might have it again. Ferns. They like humid shaded conditions. There are various types, good drainage, lots of moisture, Humidity, again, they do great in bell jars and stuff like that. They grow on rocks, trees and everything else. I have a lot of outdoor ferns. I had a fernery that was nice and dense with the shade until that 65-foot maple tree came down and it suffered. Moist, not wet. Not a good idea to moist or mist ferns. Over the years I've had, I can't tell you how many different ferns. That's another group that just doesn't do well.
We're having trouble hearing you again out here. Sorry.
I got that microphone as close to my mouth. Any closer and I'd be eating it. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, no problem.
Now I can, thank you.
Okay, if you want to increase the humidity on any of your plants, then you can get yourself a pot or saucer, fill it with pebbles, and then fill it with water. And the evaporation will create a humid atmosphere for ferns to survive off of. You can do that with orchids too. Grouping together plants do that too, because they transpire water and oxygen. Okay. I have, like I said, I have one fern and it's doing well where it's at. I don't bother it too much to give it water, maybe 8 months, because it's a closed system. I think when I turn my head, maybe that's when they can't hear me. Any questions regarding ferns? There's a couple types of ferns. Bird's nest fern, which is the one I have. Rabbit's foot fern, I had that one. And the roots themselves do look like rabbit foot. They feel like fern. Yeah. I got quite a number of ferns in my backyard all over the place. And ferns are different from plants. They don't produce seed, they produce spores. They're one of the oldest known plants on this earth, and that they produce the spores rather than the seeds. And usually you'll find them underneath the leaves, usually like late August, September, and they'll be it's called the prothallus. That's how fertilization takes place, and they will drop their spores all over your garden. Okay. Everybody knows the cinnamon fern, right? Any wet spot in New Jersey, there's always a cinnamon fern growing. Ostrich fern, royal ferns, deer tongue fern. I have one in my yard, or several in my yard. These guys, if you go out into the woods in late spring, summertime, you'll see all these ferns all over the woodlands, okay? They're different than our cultivated ferns. I wouldn't bring them into my house.
Isn't that what they use a lot of time in flower arrangements?
Yeah, I think so. Bird's nest fern, beautiful plant. However, it's very susceptible to certain insects, which love them, eat them. See the rabbit's foot fern, what I was telling you about? They actually look like rabbit's foot. Great place for these is in a window near the sink. Using the water from the sink, they get a lot of humidity that way too. Pests, oh yes. Aphids, soft body, small, various colors. Sometimes if you put your plants out in the summertime, you might drag a few of these pests in with you. Best thing to do with that is I always take the attitude that if you're going to apply pesticides, start with the lowest possible thing you could do. And with aphids, a very jet stream of water knock them off their leaf. And then, before you bring it in, do it a couple times over various days, and you should knock off a lot of the aphids. So you don't have to use strong pesticides. Insecticidal soap. It's another thing that you can use on their leaves. You just spray neem oil. It's another thing you could use. Scale. I've had adventures and tragedies with scale like you wouldn't believe. The staghorn fern that I had inside, which was 3 foot wide, sat next to a window, loved the sun, had scale so bad I had to just throw it out and buy a new one. They love palms too. And how you'll know you got scale? Because the leaves will start to turn shiny. And then when you go to touch it, it'll be like sticky. Okay, look on the underside of the leaf. They're like brown or tan bumps. I had 2 nice palms at the library before I realized that they were being under siege by these scale insects. By the time I found them, there was nothing I could do except to throw them out in the dumpster. Happens. That's why when I go to like Longwood and I see their healthy plants, I don't know how the hell they keep up with that. They got so many assistants, I guess, up there. Ants are usually vectors which will carry the scale to various parts of the plant so that they get their honeydew from the plant. The scale insect itself gets protection and movement from the insect or the ant, and the ant gets the honeydew. It's a form of mutualism. Mealybugs. I actually get mealybugs in the library. A couple of years ago, I couldn't realize where they came from because I was always cognizant and aware to check every plant every week when I water. I was up with my daughter's, and she had a couple of succulents that were on the windowsill. And underneath the windowsill was a duct that blew air only in one direction. So all the plants that were in the stream were infected. Every plant that was not in the airstream was not infected. These things are so light, they look like pieces of cotton, that the air just, when they want to move, they just let the air move them along. I realized people could drag them in from their own home into the library. When they pass by a plant, it just blows off, gets on a plant, and then start to multiply. Most of these insects are what they call hermaphrodite. They have both sexes, so they don't need a male. They don't need a female. They got it all. And they'll reproduce like you wouldn't believe. But that's taken with a little Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol when you see it, and just rub it. They die on contact. Okay, you also, when it gets a heavy infection, you can use a plant insecticide or even neem oil. Whiteflies, I don't really get too many of these, but I've been told that if you use a yellow triangle and stick them on the yellow triangle, that they'll be attracted to the yellow and just stick there and die. No questions? Spider mites, again. Excuse me. They'll call it stippled leaves. I think I got one on my lime zinger one year, and on a nice day in wintertime, it was like 50, 60 degrees, which isn't often. Take it outside and just douse it with water, get rid of it. And that was good enough. They do make a miticide for these particular insects. Because if you get a heavy infestation, you might as well just put it in the trash. Leaf spot. Too much sun, chemical injury, fungi or bacteria feeding injury from insects. Pretty much self-explanatory there. It's a process of elimination to make sure that you eliminate all possible things. Also, caveat, when you buy a plant from a nursery or a big box store, check the underside of the leaves. You see insects there, you do not want to take that home. I've known several orchid enthusiasts who will not take an orchid from a friend or whatever without checking it first. Just, what was it Reagan used to say? Trust but verify. Okay, you want to make sure you're not dragging something in your house that you don't want, and you got a massive orchid collection. Next thing you know, you got a massive insect issue. So that's another thing you want to check. Check the underside of the leaves. Check to see if the leaves that are way down at the bottom are, you know, soft, rotten or whatever. If you could pull the root, the plant out of the pot and look at it, you can do that. If you can't, then it's not root bound, and it might be just newly rooted, sent up from Florida. Okay. Another thing about, as a natural function of growth, the Phalaenopsis leaves at the bottom of the plant will actually, it carries so many leaves, it doesn't carry a whole bunch of leaves. So when the leaf gets too old, it starts to yellow and wither. And then you could just detach it from the main stem. Okay, that's different than what this is, leaf spot. It's a naturally occurring thing. Scorch. Well, I think we already covered most of that. Too much soluble salts or plants being too dry. Salt crystals can be seen on soil surface or side of container. Just good maintenance and good practice. Again, avoid heavy applications of fertilizer. Leach with clean water, and fertilizer is the problem. That's why when I soak my orchids every week, they're soaked and then they're left to drain and dry. That leaches out any remaining fertilizers that might be in there or other things that might occur. Leaf drop. Tropical hibiscus will tend to drop when you bring it in. Citrus plants will drop its leaves when it goes in. Citrus plants.
Yes.
I'm not talking about your plant.
No, mine's bad. The city, yeah, I've washed before, I've washed everything underneath.
What did you wash with?
Water.
Okay, well, try a little bit of water with isopropyl alcohol in it. Or you can even use white vinegar with the alcohol.
But I don't see any,
You have to check the stem of the plant where the stem comes out or the branch comes out. They could be anywhere.
but then everything I do, the next morning, I know, it's probably,
Mm,
well, it's spring.
And put it outside. Okay, avoid drafts for your plants. That will cause leaf drop. Abrupt changes from sunny location to dark location, it's obvious. Okay. Again, proper fertilization with the proper fertilizer, prevent leaf yellowing. Thank you for your attention. Well, I bet you guys are glad to get out of here, huh? Okay, any questions you might have? Anything at all?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
About potting. Say you have a plant that you don't want to get larger. When you're repotting, can you cut back the roots?
Root pruning, except for bonsai. I don't know too many people that do that. With bonsai, it's a natural thing, you have to root prune, but that's a specialty
Yeah.
all
Yeah, I
on its
know, I
own,
know about
yeah.
bonsai. So like if you don't, I have a philodendron that can really get huge. And what they said to do is just keep it in the same pot and that'll avoid it getting too big. But I'm thinking if it's gonna start getting pop out, so you're saying trimming back roots or something isn't an option?
You could try it. I mean, what's worse? You know, throwing it all out or just trying to remediate? But remember one thing, when you root prune, okay, you have to take off, because it's not absorbing as much into the plant itself. It's like as if you, what's that? Yeah, you could try that if you want. It's a philodendron, you might be able to root it from,
I said, wouldn't splitting the plant be better? Than cut most of it?
Yeah, like taking the cutting, I guess.
you could take cuttings and do that. I do that to my cacti all the time.
Well, yeah, I just don't know how to, do that with this particular plant. It was getting offshoots, but it's not doing that. The other thing is as far as air roots, is that bad to cut them?
That's an interesting thing. Air rooting might be another way you could go. Now, how you would do that is find the part of the plant that you want to keep, a nice stem, okay, and take sphagnum peat moss, wrap it in plastic, wet the peat moss, wrap it in plastic, put it on the stem itself, let it go for about a couple of months.
Or the actual air root?
And it may very well air root, especially if you got it where the stem connects to the leaf right there. It might air root it there.
So I actually cut the air roots off
Why would you do that?
because they were really long and I was wrapping them and wrapping them and wrapping them.
Okay. I personally do not like that idea of cutting the air roots off. If you were to do that, at the junction where the air root occurs with the sphagnum moss that's wet and wrap it in plastic and then put rubber bands to keep it closed, you could have some offshoots, roots come off of that. And then when it roots enough, cut it, dispose of the lower and repot it, and you could have a new plant altogether.
Thank you.
Nothing? Nothing? Okay. Thank you for your attention. Which isn't much. Which isn't much. Problem is, I had a 2-year hiatus between the last class and this class.
Oh, my goodness.
So I kind of like,
So these are your slides?
no, they're not my size. This belongs to the, I try to hope to force syllabus away, but sometimes it's just like, it's going from here. Yeah.
You should have your, you should have this. Thank you.
I understand those are things that